I wanted to bring art into the daily life of my company. In the mid-90s, I said to myself, I'm a journalist. I'm living in today's environment. I have to question today's questions. I have to find answers. So I should try to start to collect contemporary art. I'm Michael Ringier. I'm a trained journalist and then a publisher and chairman of Ringier AG, which is a very old traditional publishing company.
You know, the relationship between the word and the image is a very long one. But before there was newspapers, there were people telling stories on the street, showing images, and a lot of the communication in media comes from that tradition. My name is Beatrix. I am currently the director of the Hartwig Art Foundation, but have worked with the Ringier Collection from 1995 to 2014. Definitely the idea was to collect contemporary with the time the collection is supposed to live in. And then when you enter the contemporary art world, of course, a lot of the information comes from the artists you work with, the art that starts to communicate to one another. It's an organism that builds itself in a way also.
The problem is at the beginning you have to make a definition. Where would you like to start? Because it's endless. So we said, let's try to focus on artists who are using the same ingredients we are using as publishers. That means photo and text. We know the Langen Foundation since many years, and my wife said, that was 4 years ago, you know, that's your museum. Why don't we do a show here? This is an amazing place. The first idea was, of course, that Beatrix, who is the founder of this collection, that she's acting as a curator. Then I said it would be great if you have a counterpart, and why not an artist?
I'm Guyton, an artist in the collection and co-curating the exhibition. Beatrix and I worked together on an exhibition in Zurich when she was at the Kunsthalle. And Michael has collected my work for almost 20 years. When they asked me to collaborate on this show, I realized, not being a curator, I would have to deal with the show spatially and come up with a structure that made sense to me as an artist. I thought the greatest challenge was figuring out how do you show so many artworks and make it experientially meaningful. When I install my own shows, I think about the architecture and the way a viewer moves through it. So I visited Langen. I hadn't really been here before. And the building is very special, very particular.
It's not just the inside, which is very unusual because it has huge rooms. The landscape around is also very remarkable.
They're very signature elements of Tadao Ando buildings, like being outside while you're inside, and these extremely long ramps and double height spaces with mezzanines. I was most struck by the scale of the rooms and these, I would call them strange features of moving people through the building. And I realized that we had to install the works in some way that engaged with these very unusual features of the building.
I think it's a perfect place to do such a show.
We kind of intentionally choose a fully boring title. And the fully boring title is, of course, not boring at all in the end when you think what you transport as expectations and thinking into those terms. Everything you see here in painting actually does question the potential of painting in the one or the other way, and often is not even what you would consider painting. And the same applies to most of the categories that the classical art terms have.
You need some place to stand, even if it's momentary, to think about an artwork. And many of the artworks in Michael's collection do the same thing. There are a lot of photographs that questioned the history of photography, or even questioned their own status as a photograph. The same thing with the sculptures and paintings too. So this runs through the entire exhibition.
A sculpture of Guyton is a sofa or a roll of carpet intervening with the space. So there is a lot of things that actually call something but are not what you transport towards it. So it's also intentional to say this is drawing, this is photography, knowing that the terms do not fully function.
I had to find a way to dig through thousands of artworks myself and make some sense of them, rather than thinking about thematic issues or content. The thing that stood out to me that was very pragmatic was that we were dealing with photographs that have very particular installation needs. You're dealing with objects or sculpture that have to be installed. They take up space. You have paintings that need walls. This seemed like an organizing principle of using the building.
I think we really wanted to test it to the very edges and also use as much of its possibilities. And that's probably a bit unusual for this architecture, to actually test it with so much work. I often ask artists what is their favorite room, or like the ideal room. There is no ideal room. The interesting thing is to actually dialogue with the spaces.
I took this element of my work that I used in another museum in Naples, the blue carpeting, and decided to make a temporary sculpture intervention into this space. This is what's kind of unusual about my position here, because I'm curating but also creating. I'm making an artwork that will be part of the show but is clearly doing it a service. The vitrines are doing the same kind of work. They were actually shown in Zurich with the black and white painting that's in the same room, in the Japan room, in Zurich in 2013. So I thought maybe we should bring these vitrines into the space, and rather than having my drawings in the vitrines, I would put Michael's drawings in the vitrines.
For me, the big advantage of contemporary art is that you get to know the artist. And with some artists, we have established a kind of friendship. And that creates a much closer relationship also to the artworks.
I mean, I think you need a lot of time to see this show. Someone was saying there are over 500 works. I haven't counted, and I think there's like 120 artists. So it's a massive show.